Okay, we're on. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. And wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, we welcome you, the whole of you. My name is Bruce Travers, and I am the lay leader today. Our Sunday services are as diverse as we are, so if you are visiting our church for the first time, please come back again several times before drawing any conclusions about us. We're not always like this. Newcomers and guests are always welcome to participate in any of our church activities. If we have any newcomers or guests with us this morning, we invite you to introduce yourselves. Please raise your hand, and someone named Don will bring you a microphone. Okay, no taking? Okay. We now take a moment to acknowledge that the land we stand on was taken from the local indigenous people. Inspired by their culture, may we strive to become better stewards of the earth. It is good to be together, both in person and virtually.
Good morning.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to have Bruce as the lay leader, and I gave him leeway. If he wants to ad-lib it all, he's allowed. It'll probably add to the service.
And I have this on. A little better? All right, and I will speak, I'll try and project as well. So today we are blessed. On this 4th of July weekend, we should recognize that we all are blessed to live in this country. Despite all of our historical faults, despite the blemishes and issues that we face today, including 2 old white men running for president, I strongly feel that there's no better country in the world. And for that, I am truly grateful. But there are hundreds of millions of people in the world who not only are not blessed, but they literally are cursed to live in their countries. According to a 2022 United Nations study, there's over 700 million people who face severe hunger and potential starvation in the world. Millions more face major armed conflicts. Gaza, Syria, Ukraine, Myanmar, Sudan, Somalia, just to name a few. Is it any wonder that so many people want to come to this country? Over the years, we've let more immigrants come into our country than any other country in the world. And personally, I feel that's one of the major factors that we have the greatest country in the world. Most immigrants bring energy, enthusiasm, new ideas, and a burning desire to do better. Forbes magazine and the New York Times have both written recent articles about how entrepreneurial migrants are. But our present immigration system is not designed to bring in the best, the brightest, and the most in need. It is truly a broken system. But we will see that the system has been broken in the past and anti-immigrant in the past, and we've managed to eventually fix it. So all I can say is that hope springs eternal. And today, as we talk about those less fortunate than us, with fewer resources and fewer opportunities, and as we gather here to worship, let us be thankful for all that we have, and for the many friendships that we have found in this church, and for the many more that we will hopefully be making in the upcoming year.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of our faith as we join with other UU churches and fellowships in this familiar ritual. As we share the light of this chalice in our sanctuary, we also welcome those of you viewing remotely to light a chalice in your own home. Our chalice lighting today are the words of Pat Uribe Lichty. We come from many places, along different paths, bringing different truths. We come with different histories and different realities, and yet we come together as one people, with faith that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other, to bring wholeness to a fractured world. We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are. In this place, we may find others who are much like us and others who are much different. May our lit chalice remind us that we are a people taught by different stories with many voices, but always one people, working for a world where love creates justice and justice gives birth to peace. Please rise now in body or in spirit, as you are willing or able, and join in singing our opening hymn, Spirit of Life, number 123 in the gray hymnal. The words will appear on the screen. Buenos dias.
Thank you. My name is Edith Ruiz, and I will be sharing the story for all ages today. Now is a time where we invite the young, maybe the young at heart, to join us at this front row. If we have any young people here today. Our story today is Where Are You From? And it's by Shamile Sayed Mendez and illustrated by Jaime Kim. Where are you from? They ask. Is your mom from here? Is your dad from there? They ask. I'm from here for today, same as everyone else, I say. No, where are you really from? They insist. I ask Abuelo because he knows everything. And like me, he looks like he doesn't belong. Where am I from? Abuelo thinks. His eyes squint like he's looking inside his heart for an answer. You come from the Pampas, the open, free land, he says. You're from the gaucho, brave and strong. From the brown river that cleanses and feeds the land that gives us the grain for our bread, the milk from the cows. You're from mountains so high they tickle Señor Cielo's belly, where the condor roosts his family and the jaguar prowls in the night. But you're also from the warm blue oceans the copper warriors tried to tame, and the elegant palm trees stretch their fingers to caress. You're from hurricanes and dark storms, and a tiny singing frog that calls the island people home when the sun goes to sleep. From this land where our ancestors built a home for all, even when they were in chains because of the color of their skin. You're from the grandmothers who search for their grandchildren, waiting, always waiting in the plaza, while their white handkerchiefs wrapping the sorrow of their thoughts. You come from the sunshine that lights our path in this world and the rain that washes away our mistakes. But abuelo, I ask, where am I really from? Abuelo laughs. You want a place? He points to his heart. You're from here, from my love, and the love of all of us, all of those before us. From those who dreamed of you because of a song sung under the Southern Cross, or the words in a book written under the lights of the North Star. You are from all of us. And I am. The end. And thank you for sharing the story with me so we could play the little song and while everybody returns to their seats. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Susan Powers from the Lay Pastoral Care Team. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It's a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so that you can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows this morning, and Lynn Hirschenrocker will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. Today, we have one joy and three sorrow concerns. From Kip Ruffle, a joy. My niece and her husband welcomed a bouncing baby boy into their lives last week. To Kip and his family, we say, we share in your joy. Also from Kip, a concern, a sorrow. Thursday evening, my girlfriend's father passed peacefully in his home, his wife of 50 years by his side. To Kip and his girlfriend, we say, we're holding you in our hearts. From Christopher Grommel, a concern. For my partner, Jennifer, my concern is she had to have an unexpected surgery this past week and is recovering at home. To Christopher and Jennifer, we say, we're holding you in our hearts. From Joe Meyer, a concern. Joe reports that he heard from Pat Bauer, our handyman. Pat says he has just returned back to Pittsburgh after several days at a Myrtle Beach hospital. Pat says he was feeling lightheaded, and the next thing he knew, a bunch of EMS people were putting him in an ambulance. After 3 days, his wife was able to drive themselves back to Pittsburgh. No other medical details. He thinks he should be able to return to work in a week or two. Until we have him back, our projects utilizing his skills will have to be on hold for now. To Pat, we say, we're holding you in our hearts. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that exist in our hearts but remain unspoken. From far and near, please say with me our caring words. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
When I joined this church over 30 years ago, I was in a difficult spot. I was leaving one job. I actually had quit, starting up my own business, ended up getting sued by my old employer, had 3 very young kids at home, trying to work at home. It was a very stressful time. Fortunately, everything worked out very well. But during that time period, that's when I started coming to the church. And one of the moments or times that I truly felt at peace was when we would have a moment of meditation. I would have 60 seconds or more to just sit and contemplate and relax with all being quiet. And that's what we're going to do today. Nothing fancy, very simple. 60 seconds. 60 seconds of meditation. So I ask you all to get comfortable, to relax, and try and eliminate the stress and the anxiety. Sometimes a minute can seem like a long time. So I hope you've de-stressed, eliminated some of the anxiety, and are ready to move on.
I was able to de-stress there enough. Am I up? Okay. I was able to de-stress enough up there because when I came up this morning before the service started, I discovered that behind there in the lights was a very large spider who's taken up residence. And I was able to sit there for 60 seconds with my eyes closed and convince myself he wasn't coming down. Our reading today is, I'm not going to tell you who it's by. Okay, I'm going to read it to you first, and then I'm going to tell you who said it, and you might be surprised. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams. We create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we are a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever close the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost. And that was an excerpt from Ronald Reagan's final speech as president, January 19th, 1989.
Immigration. I am passionate about the concept of immigration. When I worked representing professional ball players, I actually was involved once or twice with trying to get permanent residency applications through for them. So I had a little taste of the administrative bureaucracy that you can run into when you're dealing with immigration. And we know now, we know what Ronald Reagan thought about this, and that is somewhat surprising, a conservative Republican president who was pretty smart about immigration, and I think who over time realized how beneficial it can be. And the other major thing with his presidency that took place regarding immigration, he granted through the legislation that was passed amnesty to over 3 million immigrants at that time. What I'm going to do today is take a little historical look at where we have come from, because it's an interesting history. It goes back to basically the Revolutionary War and the aftermath of that. And being a part-time professor at Point Park, I also put together a PowerPoint. Sorry for those of you who are tired of PowerPoints, but it makes it a little easier for me. There we go. So we start in 1790, shortly after the Revolutionary War. And it was our first census. And of course, our census was missing almost 20% of the people living here in the country because slaves were considered chattel. They weren't considered people, and they were not counted. So a rough estimate of our population at that time was almost 4 million people. We were the second largest state, right behind Virginia, which edged us out slightly. And we had a different composition than almost any other state. Most of the states, if you take a look over there in the United States, were predominantly populated by English immigrants. But we had a lot of Germans, a lot of Scotch-Irish, Scotch and Irish. Scots-Irish was kind of a blend of the two at the time. And if you have lived here in Pennsylvania for a long time, you probably have some background in this. I know I have a large German element to my ancestors. Well, my clicker's not working, but my computer should be. Do you have me hooked up? But when in trouble, we always have Dawn. I tried this.
Your computer's frozen.
Ah. There we go. Thank you, Dawn. I mean, some of the things we don't always appreciate. Dawn, the Wranglers, Lee, who's filling in with her son for the music, our lay leaders. And I'll even put a plug in right now. The people who do the coffee hour back there, and I'll even give you an advance notice that they're not going to be around afterwards. So please clean your coffee cups and any plates you use. Now, in 1790, we passed our first immigration law, the Naturalization Act of 1790, that basically said who could become U.S. citizens. Free white males, that meant that no indentured white servants were eligible, had to be of good character. There was nothing really that said what constituted good character, lived in the U.S. for 2 years or more, and you had to pledge allegiance. Since we all were basically immigrants at that point, the important thing was not our blood relationship at the time. It wasn't having been born in this country at that time. You had to pledge allegiance to our country. That was really the critical element for becoming a citizen, along with those other attributes. And it was mainly the states who would undertake determining who would be a citizen or not. It was not in the federal realm yet at that point. So we had very little immigration between the end of the Civil War, or the end of the Revolutionary War, and roughly 1830. Around 8,000 a year average people coming into the country. But then we had a couple of things that happened. We had the Irish potato famine, which actually didn't impact only Ireland, it also impacted most of Europe. And that brought a lot of German and Irish immigrants in particular. And whereas the initial Irish and German immigrants had been mainly Protestant, those who were coming now were mostly Catholic. And that did not make people in the United States, a lot of people, happy. There was a very major anti-Catholic feeling in the United States back in those days, back in the early 1800s. The Know Nothing Party derived from a major plank being anti-Catholicism and anti-immigration. Now, as we progressed through the 1800s, the other thing that really resulted in a large number of people coming to the United States was the Industrial Revolution, really what's considered the second Industrial Revolution. Steel, iron, coal, oil, railroads, all of these things brought a lot more people into the country. And that's where we started getting people from Southern Europe. Prior to the mid-1800s, most of the people who came were from England, France, Germany, Ireland. But in the later half of the 1800s, you get your Polish, you get your Italians, you get your Slavs, you get your Eastern Europeans coming in. And you had some people coming also from China. Initially, China did not allow immigrants to come to the United States. It was a law in China that they could not come to the United States. And I think it was around 1860 or so that they changed that. We sent an emissary over there and they agreed to not stop people from coming over. So we started to get a flow of people from Asia as well. A small amount of people coming up from Latin America, and just to give you an idea of those numbers, in the late 1800s, you've got about 11 million coming over from Europe. You've got around 250,000 coming from Asia, only 90-some thousand coming up from Latin America, South America. You also had a lot of Canadian immigrants coming down. And at that time, Canada was still part of England. So I guess they decided they didn't want that anymore. Then they wanted a new opportunity in the United States. So there we have the second industrial revolution. And going into the early 1900s, it got to the point where we started those first few years with 8,000 people per year. Now all of a sudden we're up to 1,285,000 migrants coming, mainly from Europe. And also we started seeing new immigration laws. I told you that we that the Chinese had dropped a law preventing people from coming over. Well, we got a whole lot of people coming over from China, particularly with the gold rush, the California gold rush in 1849, I believe it was. That brought a lot of people over. The building of the Transcontinental Railroad brought a lot of Chinese over, working on that as well. But, and this is where we start getting our anti-immigrant feelings and sentiments, and shown in Congress, the Immigration Act of 1891 or of 1882 barred all Chinese immigrants. Apparently, we had had enough of the Chinese. We didn't want any more. Now, 1891, that's where we first set up a federal immigration office and with immigration officers. 1917, we still had people from Japan, Korea, other Asians coming over, but in 1917, we barred all Asian immigrants. And then in 1924, they passed an act which established quotas. And the quotas were heavily weighted toward those immigrants who had come initially, going back to 1790, and taking a look, actually, it was the 1896 through the 1920, they were trying to measure immigrants in the United States and how many came from which different countries. They determined that roughly 70% of all immigrants had come from either the United Kingdom, Germany, or Ireland, and therefore 70% of all immigration opportunities were presented to those three countries. Only 30% were available for the rest of the world. So we like the idea of having white, and with the United Kingdom and Ireland, English-speaking people coming into the country. It's interesting because we did have counterpoints at this time. So it's not like it was all anti-immigrant. We had the Statue of Liberty, which France gave us in 1886. And of course, who can forget the Emma Lazarus poem, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." A great sentiment, but one that we've never really adhered to. Ellis Island, which I never realized what a kind of a beautiful setting. It probably was not considered that beautiful for those immigrants who had to pass through there. The immigrants who came to Ellis Island had to go through a rigorous medical test and could get excluded because of medical reasons. They had to present papers that showed where they came from. The peak years for Ellis Island, 1890 to 1924, and that's when that 24 immigration law passed and reduced the number of people who were coming in. They would process as many as 1,900 people a day. And some of the famous names, interestingly enough, that came in that we consider Americans: Irving Berlin, actress Claudette Colbert, philosopher Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, Charlie Chaplin, all came through Ellis Island. And this is what you saw time after time: boatloads unloading, unloading, unloading at Ellis Island. Now we get to more recent times, and really a change away from this anti-immigrant notion. 1965, that did away with the quota system. It opened up opportunities for other countries to come in, so that it wasn't all European, especially Northern European. I think I saw that in 1970, the number of immigrants coming from Northern Europe, Germany, Holland, England, Great Britain, Ireland, was roughly 70%. But by 1985, that percentage had dropped down to 10%. The Immigration Act of 1990, this is the one that was one of the final acts that Ronald Reagan signed that gave the amnesty to just under 3 million unauthorized immigrants. And I use unauthorized in here too. One of the things you'll see and hear a lot is illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants. And it is true that technically people who come in and aren't coming through proper border procedures are technically illegal. But it's hard to blame them given the current state of affairs with our immigration system. And I think a more appropriate term is unauthorized immigrants. It increased, the 1990 law increased the number of eligible immigrants by 40%. The other thing, the trade-off between Democrats and Republicans, the Democrats wanted the amnesty, the Republicans wanted to crack down on employers who were employing unauthorized immigrants as employees. Title 42 is an interesting provision too. This goes back to the 1940s. And basically what it did was say for any medical emergencies, Border Control could simply remove any unauthorized immigrants, including asylum seekers. This is what President Trump used and utilized basically to turn people away at the border because of COVID. So during the COVID years, he talked about building the wall. He could not get congressional agreement to build the wall. However, he was able to simply, through presidential executive orders, transfer money from military authorizations to the border. And interestingly, President Biden, when he came in, the first year, he could have removed the Title 42, but he didn't. He left that in place. So that the first year of the Biden presidency, we did not see that many immigrants coming in. However, and I forget if this was a legislative procedure or whether it was a health procedure, but it was decreed or decided that Title 42 would no longer apply as of, I think it was May of 2022. And that's at the point at which people started lining up to come in, basically, and where we got a huge rush of immigrants crossing the border. Some being found by the Border Patrol, a lot not. So that all of a sudden, our number of unauthorized immigrants in the United States, I think they said in 2022, it was roughly 11 million unauthorized immigrants in the United States, and they feel that that's up somewhere between 13 and 14 million today in 2024. Now here's how the current immigration is supposed to work. And this is for immigrant visas, so that a person can become, in most cases, a permanent resident, get a green card, and then within 3 to 5 years is able to apply to become a citizen, to become naturalized. So this is immigrant visas. There are also non-immigrant visas. You hear a lot about the H-1 visas and the H-2 visas, the business visas, which I think they allow 65,000 as kind of the base number, and then there's additions to that so that by the end of the year, businesses usually can bring in up to 125,000 or so people to work in their businesses. And these are usually people with a lot of expertise, a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge, the kind of people we would want to have here in the United States. But just last year in 2023, the number of applicants for that was over 700,000. So we're obviously turning away a lot of people. And that's something that most people agree should be changed, should be increased dramatically, but nobody will consider that on its own. The Republicans and the Democrats, when they want to consider anything under immigration issues, they want to take a look at the whole. The dreamers, the children of illegal immigrants who have been here in the country, who, and this goes back, I think, to Ronald Reagan, have gotten continually had executive orders which have allowed them to continue to stay. But there's still, everything is still up in the air with them. They've never been granted permanent residency. They've never been allowed to try and gain citizenship. Most people agree that they should, but they won't consider it alone. Another one of those issues that would probably have support by both parties, but never goes forward simply because they want to deal with the whole pie, not with a piece of the pie. So the people who run immigration right now is the USCIS. It's the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. It's a Department of Homeland Security. But you get a lot of other hands involved as well. You get the Department of State, because if these people are abroad, they have to go to embassies and consulates abroad to start the process. Labor, when they come to the United States, if they want to get a job, it has to be approved by labor. They have to fall within certain categories. They have to get a work permit. So there's a lot of hands that get involved other than simply Homeland Security and USCIS. There's no easy issue or no easy answer to how things should move forward. We came close to having a bill. I think one of the things that definitely needs to happen is we need more judges, we need more staff, we need more people who can process potential immigrants. Right now, for people who are actually going through this process, who are doing it what you would say is correctly, will usually wait at least 2 to 4 years before they can get processed and get through. And sometimes it's even longer than that. The backlog is simply getting worse as well. So that's one problem, and that was a problem that would have at least been addressed with the legislation that had been proposed quite a few months ago that ended up getting killed by President Trump for political reasons, because they didn't want a Democratic president to be signing a bill that would actually start to deal with this situation. And I'm not particularly thrilled with President Biden either. I mean, we can't allow people simply to come into the country without a process. And essentially, that's what he allowed to happen for a couple of years. He took no steps until recently. And I too think that the reason he did it recently, was it because it was the right thing to do, or was it because it was the political thing to do? I'm inclined to think it was because it was the political thing to do. So there are no easy answers. You could try and do it piecemeal and perhaps solve some of the problems, but for the time being, neither side, neither party seems to be willing to do that. One of the things that I'm going to do is stick around for 15, 20, 30 minutes afterwards to discuss with anyone who wants to stick around thoughts, ideas, issues going forward. As I said, there are no easy answers here. It is a real problem. But when you listen to what President Reagan had to say, and what so many other people have to say, we need immigration. We need responsible, processed immigration. We need people to have a path to be able to come here. Right now, we don't. At least we don't have an effective one. So I'll leave you with that. I think that was the end of my PowerPoint, so I have nothing else to say. But I will later when I'm back here afterwards. You really don't have to applaud for Bruce that way.
Speak for yourself. Please join me in affirming our mission statement. By building a loving religious community that nourishes the spirit, celebrates life, and cherishes the connectedness of all things, we will transform ourselves and our world. Generosity is a spiritual practice, one that enlarges the heart and lightens the spirit. For no matter how much or how little we have, in the sharing of it, both the one who gives and the one who receives are blessed. As an independent Unitarian Universalist congregation, we depend on your financial support to pay our staff, to maintain our beautiful campus, and to offer meaningful worship services and religious exploration programs. We appreciate your generosity and will be good stewards of your contributions. Instructions for online contributions are on the screens. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Northside Common Ministries. If you're visiting us for the first time, feel free to let the basket pass. Your presence with us today is your gift to us. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. It takes me back to scout camp. Yeah. Please join me in dedicating the offering. You'll see the words on the screen. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Now please rise in body or in spirit as you're willing or able, and join in singing our closing hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth. It's number 21 in your gray hymnals, or you can follow along the words appearing on the screen. extinguish our chalice? Using the words of Robin Gray, the flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world.
Two brief announcements. Number one, next week, I hope everyone can make it because we're going to be talking about, Edith is going to be talking about our, which groups? Our covenant groups, right, our covenant groups. I've taken part in one of those. They truly are a great opportunity to get to know other UUs in the church and also to really talk and be listened to about a variety of interesting topics. So I hope you'll come, and if not come, then at least watch it on YouTube. The second one I mentioned earlier, we had a couple of people who graciously set up coffee hour for us. They had to leave, so there's no one to clean up afterwards. So please take your coffee cups, take your plates, rinse them off, put them in the dishwasher, and that will be a big help. So thank you. And now for some closing words. Leading up to this service, I did mention that I'd also look at our UU faith and how it ties into immigration. And it's interesting, and I'd start by taking a look at your order of service and take a look at those first two principles. One, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And that means everyone who's here, everyone who comes into the country, authorized or unauthorized. And two, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And that means our relationship to particularly those unauthorized immigrants. If we truly live up to these values, we'd embrace those who come here as immigrants, those who do it legally, but still have to deal with coming to a new country, meeting new people, new cultures, a new way of life, and those who come unauthorized, or as some people consider them, illegally. They usually don't have resources, and they're constantly looking over their shoulder. Will they be caught? Will they be deported? What about their families? Would they be leaving family members behind if they got deported? Or are they trying to get family members here to the United States, also unauthorized or illegal? There are many organizations that help immigrants. And I have a list of Pittsburgh organizations that work directly with immigrants and partner organizations that provide services for immigrants. And I have about 10 copies with me. So afterwards, if you are interested in finding out more and checking in with some of these organizations, I have copies, and I can make more copies. And there's also an interesting UU story that ties into immigration, kind of indirectly related in a way. And it all focuses on our chalice. You know that our silos here basically serve as a representation of our church. It's a symbol of our church. Well, the flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. When did this start? Where did the chalice come from? It originated back in the late 1939, 1940 in Europe. There was the Unitarian Service Committee, which was operating in Europe, particularly in Portugal, in Lisbon, Portugal, trying to help get immigrants out of Europe, out of Nazi control. In particular, trying to get Jews out, also looking at intellectuals, authors, a wide variety of people, but in particular trying to get the Jewish people, particularly in Germany, but in other countries out. One of the things that people needed to be able to get out and to leave primarily through Lisbon, Portugal, was you needed border papers. You needed papers that had been signed usually by your originating country, your originating province, something that basically gave you authorization to travel. Well, the USC, the Unitarian Service Committee, came up with an idea that perhaps they, as an official organization in Europe, could try and put together border papers for people. And to make it more official, they adopted the flaming chalice as their symbol that was on every one of these official border documents. And also, the flaming chalice came to be known as a symbol of help, so that if people saw someone who either mentioned the chalice, had some paperwork with the chalice, they could know that they were dealing with friends. So that was the Unitarians' contribution to trying to get people out in a desperate time. You notice, too, that there are two circles around here. The one stands for Unitarianism, the other one for Universalism. And it's interesting that the flaming chalice really wasn't adopted by the UUA until about 1976. And it's only been in the last 20 to 25 years that we've actively used it in our services. But it is an interesting symbol, a symbol that does have a lot of meaning, particularly when you are talking about immigration and our role in immigration and what it can be and what it has been in the past. So with that, in closing, I'll now say, and this is another UU important concept, go now and love. Love thyself, love those around you, and welcome the love that you may receive from others. And as science fiction buffs also know, and I am a science fiction buff, as you leave, may the force be with you. Thank you.